So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. As you can tell, I'm a little jet lagged. I'm still in a different time zone mentally. I came out of here from San Francisco, so bear with me a little bit. I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Sharat Chander. I'm part of the Java team at Oracle. I actually started on the Java team in 1999, as you can tell from the color of my hair. And this is my sixth JFall. So I'm very happy that the organizers asked me to come again. And what I've said over the last 6 years is, as was mentioned this morning by Bertjan, JFall has always been, for me, the best one-day Java conference on the planet. And that's because there's so much material that you actually leave the conference with more questions than answers. And I think that's the most important thing, is not to have all your questions answered here, but leave with new ideas that you haven't thought of before. So you're going to have a lot of sessions today that are going to be immersing you in the code, immersing you in technology. But there's a flip side to that as well, and that's the community part. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that, and that's the OpenJDK project. And just real quick, just with a show of hands, how many of you are actually part of an OpenJDK project and are actively contributing? Maybe 2 people? Okay, so here's the thing. You as developers right now have more influence in your company than ever before. It's not about just using technology, it's knowing why to use it and how to shape it for the future. So usually this session is about 90 minutes. It's a workshop to actually explain how you can be part of the OpenJDK project. I'm going to try and summarize that in about 15 minutes, give you a little bit of a taste, but if you have interest in joining an OpenJDK project or learning more about that, please just DM me. And if you like the image on the screen, I actually created that for JFall. So if you want that image, DM me and I'll mail that to you as well. So little safe disclaimer here. This is just from Oracle. It says, don't believe a word I said. Not true. So let's talk a little bit about OpenJDK. So everyone, I'm sure, has visited openjdk.java.net. Yes? Okay, so you're at least familiar with the location. But what is that location? It's really where the entirety of the OpenJDK project is hosted. So that's where we have all the projects that developers, the new features, the new functionality, both for the platform as well as the language. Now, even though Oracle is the primary contributor, we also provide the infrastructure for you as developers to do a lot of the testing. And of course, there's a lot of other contributors as well. As you may have seen, we released Java 13 in September. Is anyone here on Java 13 by chance? In production? Trick question. All right. Java 12. 1. 11. Very good. 10. Everyone skip 10. 9. Okay, this is where all the hands go up. 8. Yeah, of course you are. You need to start migrating. You must do it. But anyway, what this is meant to demonstrate is, even though a lot of the engineering efforts and the fixes and the evolution of the language is coming from contributions from Oracle, we're also getting contributions from other companies as well as individuals. And that's important because you as developers have the opportunity to shape and frame the future of the language and the runtime. And that's why it's so critical that you start thinking about, how can I participate in the process? Because we at Oracle are just making guesses. We really are. Like, we try to get the information as best we can from the ecosystem, but at the end of the day, it's your participation that helps make OpenJDK that much better. And I'm really happy to see this chart come out. If you had seen the one for 12 and 11, is very similar, but what we're actually seeing over time is more and more organizations and more individuals participating in the process. So on OpenJDK, it's basically organized by groups. So these groups are basically developers that share a common interest, that start iterating and evolving various projects. There's a few listed here. There's many, many more. All of these projects are defined by a wiki and a mailing list. So you can actually actively see what's happening on a day in and day out basis. Code check-ins. debates that are happening. So if there's a specific project that interests you, maybe you don't want to dive in too deep right now, and you just want to monitor. You can actually see what's happening immediately in this point in time, because we do all of our development in the public. Nothing's hidden. It's full transparency, fully open. We want to have you give us the feedback we need, again, to shape and frame the future. There's also sponsored projects as well as many other companies that are helping in and shaping the specific projects inside of OpenJDK. Can anyone name a project that was in 13? Switch expressions. It's changed. That's right. Text blocks, right. So those are some of the recent things, and those are all preview features. And the reason why we introduce preview features is ever since we've moved to this 6-month model, we want to start also bringing forward projects that are 99% of the way done, but we still want additional feedback. And so what we do is we release those under preview, hoping to get feedback. So as you notice with switch expressions, it is actually a preview feature in 12, and it showed up again in 13 as a preview feature. That's because the feedback that we got in 12 demonstrated there was still a little bit more work to do. So we're hoping that by the time Java 14 rolls around, when does Java 14 ship? March. Yep. 6 months. Very predictable. So there's no longer this guessing game as far as when a specific release is going to come out, versus the days I remember when there was 1.3, 1.4, 1.5. There's sometimes 2 years, sometimes 3 years, sometimes 4 years of gap. And what we wanted to do is actually bring you a more predictable release schedule. So within those groups are actually projects. And this is basically where all of the artifacts of a specific project is kept as a repository. And even within these projects, there's also mailing lists. So a lot of these projects actually have active repositories. So if you go to Project Amber or Project Loom, you can actually get early access builds today. And what happens is a lot of these long-term projects will start to subdivide into incremental features such that you get them on a 6-month release before the entirety of the project is complete. And that means you can start to account for what is happening. But it also gives you a chance to shape things that are not done. So I think this is a big benefit to all of you. Now, within the project, it's important to know who's there. So I'm just using my colleague Jesper Williamson as an example. We always want to identify what role every individual has, what role they have on a mailing list, what role they have on a project, what role they may have in terms of their contribution. And so it's important as you get familiar and more participating within any aspects of OpenJDK, you also want to know what your peers are doing, and it's very easy to understand by understanding what roles they have within a specific project. Now, for you, it's like, where do I jump in? What role should I take? Well, that's all dependent on how much risk you want to take, how much expertise you have, how much learning you think you still have to do. And so I always say start small, then go big. So the way I actually got started back in 1999, I was actually just an observer. Observed a project, I learned from my peers, learned from the community, then you just sort of like increase your activity level year in and year out. And eventually, hopefully some of you might choose to become an author where you're actually a sponsor of a project such that you actually take ownership to shape and frame that. Now, it's important to understand sort of the governing body behind OpenJDK. So can anyone tell me who the governing chair of the OpenJDK project is? Does anyone know his name? And if anyone can name him, I will give you my NL Jug t-shirt. Happy to do it. Any guesses? It's not Mark Reinhold. Oh, everyone's like, oh, that was my answer. George Saab. So George Saab was actually one of the original members of the Java team back in JavaSoft back in 1995. He left, went to BEA, Oracle acquired BEA, and now he's been running the Java team since 2010. So he's the OpenJDK governing chairperson. So it's important to know that we don't make all the decisions. We also have a vice chair that's identified by IBM. And then, of course, if you ever wanted to run and be part of the governing board, that is also open to you. Now, the community is the most important aspect of this, is what I really wanted to get into today. And that's about you actually joining. So first and foremost, please go to openjdk.java.net. Discover the mailing lists that interest you. Within each of those projects are sub-lists that should actually map to something that you are curious about or have a passion about. So please go and explore that. Now, if you want to contribute, hold on. There was a camera there. Okay, I didn't account for that. I believe all the slides are going to be made available to you, but if not, again, DM me and I'll send you the deck. If you actually want to contribute code to OpenJDK, you actually have to sign something called an OCA, Oracle Contributory Agreement. Now, this is just a document that says your contributions will be utilized by Oracle in an open source project, and you basically give us the authority to insert your contributions into the OpenJDK project or any of the sort of the language changes that you choose to make. So it can be a company, it can be an individual, a company can sponsor you. It is really your choice. But if you have questions about the OCA, I'm happy to have a discussion with you offline because that's a deeper discussion, but we need more contributors from the community. It can't just be Oracle. Or sometimes, as I say, Sun. Oh, did I say that? I said that. All right. So we've tried to simplify this. So we've started a new element on the OpenJDK project, which is our developer's guide. So all of you at your office, you probably have a development sort of document that tells you how your company orchestrates an entire build, test, deploy environment, and maintenance. The same thing goes with OpenJDK. So please, if you're interested, read this developer's guide. We've just started this. It's in no way complete, but we're trying to simplify the on-ramp such that you can become a contributor. Now, this guide already kind of exists within individual projects. So if you go to a project, it'll tell you kind of like what's the requirements, what's the roles, what are the areas that where help is needed. But this is a bit archaic and antiquated. What we want to do is take all of this information out of each project and centralize that in the developer's guide so you have sort of one-stop shop in terms of documentation. And once you actually make a decision, the question is, where do I start? So for many, it's actually best just to go to the Java bug system, and you can start picking out things that are not done. So this is where you get a chance to actually do some search about things that interest you, what has not been completed, what is still in flight, or things that I can easily start picking up in small increments to increase my knowledge, such that maybe I might consider signing the OCA. And we actually have an entire directory as far as which search strings you can use inside of this, such that it simplifies your searchability. And then lastly, it's all about idea sharing, right? You know better than we do what's needed out there. And what we need is for you to start giving us feedback. So inside the project, you can mail ideas that are small, or if you want to take on a bigger role, does anyone know what a JEP is, a JEP? Java Enhancement Proposal? So that's a bit trickier, right? That's a bit more complex. We want to make sure anything that is significant in size is going to ensure it maps to what the JCP sets in terms of the specification. So that's where you see a lot of the new enhancements that we have in every release. It starts with a JEP. Each JEP has a number, and then it tells you and identifies what type of functionality is there. So if you want to start and lead a JEP, and it doesn't have to be Oracle sponsored, a third-party company can do that, and there are companies that are doing that, you have that flexibility. But the most important part is this. Take your skills in terms of the development knowledge you're going to have here today and understand you also have a community role as well. And we need you to be active participants because the history of Java has made vibrant because we do this together. So with that, I want to say thank you, and hopefully I'll see more hands next year when I come back and I ask, who's part of the OpenJDK project? Hope to see all your hands up next year. Thank you so much.